So far we talked about taqleed. We talked about writing your will. Number 3, khums, brothers and sisters. Khums is, and this is also part of the will, but we have to speak about this because this is important. The validity of your Hajj, brothers and sisters, sometimes can be affected by whether you paid your khums or not. Meaning, if I go to Hajj and I have not paid khums, that may potentially, not always, it just varies from case to case, that may potentially negatively impact your Hajj. So because it's a very complex formula, that's why scholars state before you go to Hajj, make sure that you take care of your khums. Any khums that you have not paid in your life, from the day you became baligh, from the day that I became mature, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started to hold me responsible for the wajibat. From that day, any outstanding khums, I have to make sure to take care of that before Hajj, so that when I go to Hajj, I go pure. There isn't anything in debt towards me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may refuse my Hajj, may not accept my Hajj, may not forgive me, because I have come with all of these outstanding balances. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, take care of that, then come and ask me for tawbah. Then come and ask me for forgiveness. So that's why taking care of our Hajj, brothers and sisters, taking care of our khums before Hajj is very important, so that you can go with your mind being clear and with your conscience being clear. Now, real quick, this is very long, very detailed, but real quick. What is khums? Khums is basically a religious tax that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to pay. It's mentioned in the Quran. It's mentioned in the hadith, multiple hadiths of Ahlul Bayt. وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ, and know that any money that you make, any gain, غَنِمْتُم, any gain that you make in this dunya, فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسًا, 1/5 of it is for Allah. And that's where the word khums comes from. Khums means 1/5. So 20%, which is 1/5, tax that has been legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the difference between khums and like your income tax is your income tax, it applies to everything that you make, your entire income. Versus the khums does not apply to your entire income. It only applies to the surplus. What you don't spend during 1 year, whatever your fiscal year, your tax year, your khums year, whatever you don't spend, whatever is extra, your savings, that is khumsable. You have to pay khums on that. So let me give you an example. Can you go to the next slide, Ali? So this is an example. Let's say my income this year was 100,000. Do you pay 20% of that as khums? No. Why? Because khums is not on the income, it's on the surplus income. Meaning, let's say during that year I spent 80,000 of it on my mortgage, my bills, food, travel, car payments, whatever I need to spend on, my expenses. And then I end up with 20,000 money, 20,000 extra dollars. I don't know what to do with. Should I go on a vacation with? Should I buy a huge TV with? Should I invest it in the stock market? Whatever it is, right? So that 20,000 surplus is khumsable. So 20% of the 20,000 is what? The answer is in front of you. 4,000. So if you made $100,000, in this scenario, your khums is 4,000. So it's not really 20%, it's what? 4%. Now if someone spent the entire 100,000, well, I made 100,000, I had too many expenses. How much khums you pay? 0. So khums is on what you don't spend for your expenses. Anything that you leave investments, it's on your savings account, your investment, whatever you don't spend for whatever reason. Khums applies to that. 20%. So in our case, 4,000. Now what do you do with that 4,000? Khums is divided into two parts. Sahm al-Sada, Sahm al-Imam. The first belongs to the Imam of your time, Al-Imam al-Mahdi. Now, during our era, the era of the ghaiba, the occultation of the Imam, because we don't have access to the Imam, who serves as the representative of the Imam? The Maraja. So who do you give Sahm al-Imam, which is half of your khums? So in this scenario, 2,000, you're supposed to give it, number one, either to your marja that you follow. Number two, if there is an Islamic organization that has authorization, it's called ijaza. From the marja, you can give that to them. Or number three, any Islamic organization that you believe between you and Allah, it would make Al-Imam al-Mahdi happy for me to give my money there. If Al-Imam al-Mahdi right now was here, and he would see me give this 50% Sahm al-Imam to this Islamic organization, it would make him happy. If I am sure of that, then you can bypass the marja in this situation. Because it doesn't belong essentially to the marja, it belongs to the Imam. The marja is only a way that we can access the Imam because he is the representative of the Imam. So this is basically Sahm al-Imam. And then there's Sahm al-Sada. Any person who's a Sayyid and he's in need. Sayyid means their lineage goes back to Bani Hashim. Sayyid doesn't mean alim, scholar. Any person who's from a family, their lineage goes back to Bani Hashim. You know them, you can directly go and give them the other 2,000. This is Sahm al-Sada. Now when it comes to Sahm al-Imam, brothers and sisters, this is a recommendation that I can make here, that we have the IIA construction, the masjid that you all are aware of on Beach Daily. It's a need. The IIA is in a debt right now because there was a loan that we had to take from a bank. There's interest that we have to pay. So this is somewhere that I highly recommend if you're going to Hajj and you plan on paying your Sahm al-Imam, which is 50% of your khums. This is somewhere that you know will, inshallah, please the Imam. It's serving Islam, it's serving the community, and there's a big need. So this is a recommendation that I can make, brothers and sisters. Before you go to Hajj, make sure you pay your khums, and the best, or one of the best places for you to pay it is this masjid that is in need. And you know that this is a 501c non-profit organization, so you can get a tax deduction. If you do pay it here, you can ask for a receipt, get a tax deduction, khums, and at the same time, you're helping build the IIA new masjid. And the IIA does have authorization from some of the maraja as an ijaza to collect and spend Sahm al-Imam, not Sahm al-Sada. Remember, Sahm al-Sada, the 50% Hashemite one, has to be given to a Sayyid that is in need, whether here, whether in Iraq, Lebanon, India, wherever. And you can do that directly, or you can give it here to the IIA and we can distribute it on your behalf. So this is something, brothers and sisters, that inshallah we can take care of before going to Hajj. Now, if I didn't pay khums for a few years of my life, it's going to be very hard to know the 20% of my surplus. And what do I do in those cases? You do a settlement, just like with taxes. If they catch you not paying taxes for years, you have to do a settlement. And the settlement is basically, you have to get an appointment from your marja, or your local scholar that is a representative of the maraja, and you can do a settlement. Sit down, explain your story, and you can make a settlement that, you know what, based on what I remember, based on the numbers that I have, I'm probably indebted this much, and you can pay it in installments. This is also a service that is provided here in the IIA. You can inshallah request that if this is something you need. A settlement. The point is, brothers and sisters, get this taklif off your conscience before you go to Hajj. Sometimes there are certain things that you're not aware of, but everything that you own, everything that you make, and you do not spend it during that year, there will be a khums that you have to pay on it. Whether it's cash, whether it's gold, whether it's property, yani real estate, whether it's stock market, whatever that can be owned, and it is not spent during the same year that you make it. So let's say your year, you go by just a normal year, 2004, 2005. Whatever you make in 2024, you don't spend in 2024, that's khumsable. Whatever you made in 2025, even if I spent it on the next day of the new year, I spent it on January 1. You made it in 2024, but you spent it on January 1, 2025, it's khumsable. So it's like Allah is giving you leeway during that year. And that year doesn't necessarily mean 2024. You can create your own khums year. Let's say I like to go by my birthday. I'm born June 1, fine. From June 1, 2024 to June 1, 2025, whatever you made in that period, you have to spend it in that period. Is that clear? So this is regarding khums. Any questions regarding this? Yes, sister. Yes. There are two main exceptions to khums, and these are the two primary exceptions. Dowry. A wife that receives a mahar, a dowry, this is khums exempt. Even if 20 years she doesn't touch it. Number two, if you inherit money, you have to pay khums on it. Only the ulama say if it's inheritance from a distant family member. And all of a sudden you're told, well, one of your cousins died, and it seems like he wasn't married, didn't have kids, and wallah, you're the closest family member. In Arabic they say irthun la yutawaqa, something that was unexpected. Meaning everyone expects to inherit their parents. Maybe, la samahallah, if your kids die, you inherit them, your brothers and sisters, your siblings. But people beyond that, usually you don't expect to inherit them because they're going to have their own inner circle of family members. So if it is an inheritance that is from distant family members, here, I said it the other way. If it is inheritance from distant family members, you have to pay khums. You have to pay khums on it. If it's from your first degree family members, then you don't pay khums. I said it the opposite, afwan. So if it's inheritance from your parents, from your siblings, so maybe even uncles and aunts, it just depends if it's considered as something expected or not expected, then there is no khums on it. There's no khums. But if it's from a distant family member, there is khums. So we can say, generally, mahar, dowry, and inheritance, no khums on it, except if it's that type of inheritance. Everything else, through whatever gift, if I make it through winning a prize, whatever it is, an allowance, khums will apply if I don't spend it during that year. Naam, someone had a question about khums here. Yes. The Shia school of thought, yes. All the maraji' that I know, they say that khums is wajib, and they explain it in the way that I explained it. Sahm al-Sada, Sahm al-Imam. And like I said, it's derived from the verse of in the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُمْ, is it وَاعْلَمُوا or maybe فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ. Everything that you gain, there's a 20%. 20% of it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hadiths of the imams, they tell us all these other details that I spoke about. Naam. I think we only have a couple of minutes before adhan, so we'll have to wrap it up. Yes, sister. Yes. It applies to every single gift. So, dowry and inheritance, these are the only two exceptions. Everything else that you own, you don't spend during that year, you have to pay khums on it. Everything else. Naam. Alaykum as-salam. So if you receive gold as a gift, and it's like jewelry gold, if you don't use it for a whole year, or anything like clothes, someone gifts you, or you buy clothing, or you buy perfume, or whatever it is, and you don't spend it during that same year, then you'll have to pay khums on it, yes. If you use it even once, then it's a part of your expense. You see, the thing that the Imams told us is, if anything is a part of your expenses, you can exclude it. If you buy something and don't use it, it's not an expense. And I bought clothing, I never used it. It's just sitting in my closet. That's not an expense. That's not something I used. But if you used it, then it's no longer khums is wajib upon. So anything that you bought and used, no khums. But if you bought and then it wasn't used for the entire year, then you have to pay khums on it. No, it's just the first time. Just the first year. You wore it the first year, khalas ba'd. Same thing. You wore it the first year, the year that you got it, khalas ba'd. You don't have to pay khums on that ever again. No. Yes. So why are you buying that? For investment? Yeah, obviously. So if you're buying it for investment, that means you have to pay khums on it. It doesn't matter. It's just like someone who's buying stocks. You're not going to wear your stocks, are you? Khalas. Then whatever you don't use because you forgot to use it or because it can't be used, that means it's not part of your expenses. That means it's for investment or saving purposes. You have to pay khums on it. Yes. Yes, sister. Yes, so 401k, you have to pay khums on it whenever you own it. So because the 401k, when do you have access to it? It's when you retire, correct? So whenever you retire, that year that you collect it, that's when you have to pay khums on it. That year, well, you turn 65, you retired, whatever it is, that's when you have to pay khums on it. Because before that, you don't really have access to it. And if you do want it, there's going to be a huge penalty on it. So you're not even going to get all of it. So whenever you get your 401k, this is when you pay your khums on. Versus Social Security, when you receive your Social Security, there's no khums on it. Unless it stays for 1 year and you don't spend it because it's new money. Versus 401k, no, this was something you invested years ago. So the same day that you get your 401k, you have to pay the khums then and there. Social Security, you have a year. You spent it, no khums. You didn't spend it, there's khums.